that so many of you could join us, because this is becoming such an important topic for us in HR. And we need to, I'm very, very passionate about it, as some of you might have noticed that have seen me speak, that we really are the group in the organization that has to help our executives drive adaptive organizations. So if we jump right into it, and I'm just going to try and wake up my machine, there we go. One of the key things that we know now is that probably 40% of the world's leading companies will not exist in a meaningful way 10 years from now. So 2030. And I'm really interested in whether you think your organization will be one of those that will exist or not exist 10 years from now, if you see how you are responding to environmental changes, to changes in technology, to reskilling your workforce, to the way your leaders are leading the organization, to the way you organize. Do you feel that there is enough momentum? Do you feel that there is enough understanding of how to respond to the changes in the world? We think not, if we start to look at these kind of figures. And we think that the only way out of this really is, as Jeff Bezos says, is agility. So how do we create that kind of agility? And I've got to be honest, the last 2 to 4 weeks, I've had several conversations with clients who've said to me, but what if I have old school leaders? What if my board doesn't drive it? And I say, well, I think it's a choice now whether you want to be the 40% that doesn't make it, or the 60% that makes it. I don't think we have that much choice anymore. The question is, as I said before, who drives this? And a lot of people say to me, but surely it's the CEO. Yes, but who drives it with the CEO? And for me, this has got to be us. We have to be that group of people that sit with the CEO and the board and everybody else and help them understand that we have to move from classical organizations to adaptive organizations. And this is true across all industries. And how do we know whether we are classical or adaptive? So as we sit there, and Alan's going to help me, you also have some chat options that you can type things in for us. But I'm wondering whether you see yourself more on the left or on the right as an organization. Are you more the plan do type of classical organization where the strategy is still a 3-year strategy that is cascaded down to all your people in KPIs, if that even happens? That takes about a year. Do you still have strong silo functional structures? Do you have strong top-down decision making? Do we have very linear processes so we don't do experiments and quickly learn from them? What does your talent management look like? Is it very episodic? Is it very intuitive? Is it data informed? Do you still work in your old operating model? So all of those things would tell me that you're still very much in a classical organization. What would tell us whether you're adaptive would be that you are sensing often the environment. There's information coming in and you are responding, and you're actually giving people resources to respond to this. So we still define a direction. We don't want to be directionless, but we have guardrails. Those guardrails tell us what are the principles we'll run this organization by. We are quite clear about our purpose and our values and our outcomes for our clients and our employees. But we also spend a lot of time cultivating capability. We are upskilling, reskilling, building human capability, and also using machines effectively where we need that kind of capability. We work in cross-boundary networks. We have a lot of autonomous teams. Now, this is, again, not leaderless teams, because they have direction, and because they're clear about their guardrails, they can get on with it. And they can work in rapid check and learn cycles. They have database, continuous talent management. Talent is inside or outside the organization. It doesn't really matter. And they reinvent their business models and their ways of working. So it feels and looks quite different. I wonder if you can just for a moment type in there for us in the chat box, and Alan's going to help me. Just type in, I think I'm in a classical organization, or I think I'm in an adaptive organization, or I think I'm somewhere in the middle. Let's just get a sense in this group of people attending our webinar today, what the split is between classical, adaptive, or somewhere in between. If you can take a moment, we have 20 participants. So let's have a bit of a look at Do you think you're more classical? Do you think you're more adaptive? Do you think we're somewhere in the middle? If you start to look at what it means, because it's very important for us to have a very good idea of what it means. And Alan, it looks like people are starting to respond there.
Yes, yeah, Marianne, they are. We have classical from Kim Smith. Stephen Hanlon says classical, no, we need to go to adaptive. Lena Trettel says in the middle. Tracy Horton says somewhere in the middle. Lisa Bruno, classical, and Cheryl says moving from classical to adaptive on the journey. Felix says I work with classical and moving into adaptive, but slowly. Janet says somewhere in between, but getting closer to adaptive. So thank you, everyone. That's great comments.
Thank you. That's a good start. And we do still see a lot of classical, and it is going to become an issue for us quite soon. And if we don't understand as HR how to drive adaptive organizations, I think we're going to find ourselves in a position where we're not making enough impact and value anymore as a function. So what makes an organization adaptive? Well, McKinsey's given us really great research, so let's have a bit of a look at that. They looked at what agile performance units look like, and what they found is that they scored in the top in these kind of practices there on the right. So clear strategic guidance. So agility doesn't mean that we have no strategy. We are quite clear about where we are heading with a shared vision and purpose, but also we are entrepreneurial. And I think that's something that a lot of organizations have lost over the years. There's shared and servant leadership, a real need for leadership to be right down where the customers are and where these teams are.
Sorry to interrupt,
yes.
Marianne. Just some people are saying that just seeing the your title slide. Is there other slides that we should be working?
There is other slides I've been working through.
Yes.
Let me test that.
It's just some people saying they're just seeing your Root Consulting, but they're not seeing any other slides. That's all.
Okay, can you see it now? It says my screen sharing has been paused. So let's stop that for a moment.
All right.
And I'm going to share again, and we'll try that because for some reason it says it's been paused. So I'm going to share. Thank you for letting us know. Can I just click now? All right, I'm going to go back here. Is this the slide people couldn't see?
I think so.
Okay, I'm going to just go back here. This is where I started.
All right, great.
Yeah, 40% of companies will not be existing in a meaningful way now. We said that we need more agility. Then we looked at what does it actually mean to be an adaptive organization or to be a classical organization. And this is where hopefully you can have a good look at that now, where people started to say, I think we're more classical. I think we are somewhere in the middle. We didn't have anyone say we're adaptive. Where we do get people saying that, it's often when they are a new organization that's been set up, either in tech or in renewable energy. We're starting to see that come through. Probably the biggest challenge is people are putting in a lot of agile processes like Scrum and those kind of things, but they're not actually changing their operating model and their org design and reskilling their workforces. That would probably be what we are seeing the most of. So hopefully that's caught everybody up, and then coming back to the McKinsey research that says, all right, so what makes an organization adaptive? We set their strategic guidance, there's a clear vision, but it's also entrepreneurial. Now I'm going to come back to that because it's two speed, it's not one speed. But the big thing is also the leadership has to change. It cannot be done in the way it's been done before, and it needs to be very transparent. If we are going to be running a lot of experiments and learning with rapid iteration, we have to have quick feedback loops. People have to know where projects are at. They've got to know what's happening. And the learning, this continuous learning, has got to be pulled through the organization really quickly. Most of all, it requires flexible resource allocation. And I've certainly been involved with quite a few organization redesigns where we have looked at having more flexible pools of talent that can flow to work priorities. Of course, there's always some business as usual, but if we have no flexibility in our resourcing, it's very hard for us to do the sense and respond that we said is so important in adaptive organizations. Interesting enough, there's stable practices and dynamic practices. And you'll also see that even though it's lovely to have open physical and virtual environments, for example, that is not one of the key things that makes an organization adaptive. So I think very often we think if we do that, we give some agile training, some scrum, we open up our environments, we're going to get the adaptive, but that's actually not what is driving it. Again, if we look at McKinsey, you'll start to see, again, have a quick look now as I talk through this. This will give you even more information on your organization. Because what we want is we want dynamic capability, but we also want a stable backbone. And I think a lot of leaders get really nervous when we talk about adaptive. But if we say to them that it requires both a stable backbone as well as a dynamic capability, we're having a different conversation. We don't want to be so stable and so weak in dynamic capability that we are still a bureaucracy. And you can go through those different things there, risk averse, very efficient, very slow, and maybe tick the ones that you think is still very much alive and well in your organization. But we can also be in this heady startup phase, the top left, and we've certainly seen enough of those, where everything's dynamic and no decisions are made and there's no stable backbone. And this often we see when startups have to start to become more medium-sized organizations and people start to really say, but we don't want to be a business. Well, we do need a little bit of stability in our backbone. It cannot be a free-for-all, frenetic, creative, chaotic situation forever. Of course, we also have the ones that are trapped, and we certainly see that where things are stable, but also the dynamic capability is very weak and it's quite uncoordinated and very rigid. And here you'll see quite a bit of politics and finger pointing, a lot of local tribes. They will always tell you how good they are in a crisis. I work with a lot of senior teams who will say, yes, I know we're not that great as a senior team, but you know what? When there's an emergency, we are fantastic. That's very much a trapped culture. So agile, we want to be quick to mobilize and nimble, but we also really want to grab collaboration. And one of the things we see is it's got to be easy to get things done. And we know you're not agile when it's not easy to get things done. Responsive, free flow of information, quick decision making. People are empowered to act. They're also resilient and they have intelligent failures. They learn from those failures. So again, quickly there for us in your chat box. Do you think you're more of a startup, more agile, more of a bureaucracy, which is always hard to spell? So if you just want to put B, that's fine. BTSA, we can deal with that. And trapped. What do you think of your current organization? If you look at it now from this perspective, do you think you're more of a startup, more agile, more trapped, more of a bureaucracy? And I see we're getting right answers there. So Alan's going to track that for us again, and hopefully you can all see the slides.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so Ruth says mix of startup and agile. Cheryl says trapped.
Trapped is hardest, I think.
Yeah, Lisa says BTA.
Bit of everything. All right.
Yeah.
I think this is a great thing for you if you want to start to have the conversations with your leaders, is to get them to do this with you and start to say, well, where do we want to be? I think that at least just opens up the conversation to make sure that we're starting to step into agile. Of course, again, from Harvard Business Review, as I said before, it's about balancing agility and consistency. We do need consistency in our leaders. We do need consistent stories to be told. We don't want to be in chaos where different stories and narratives are running in our organization. And this comes from Mary Yobin and Michael Arena. So how did General Motors tackle this? General Motors said, well, if we want to have both those things, we need to run at 2 speeds. We need to continue to make the cars we are making and do them really well. And we also have to start to build our electric cars and start to partner with rideshare, because if we don't, we are not going to be there in the future. So what they did is they have what they call the operational space or strategy, and they have the entrepreneurial space or strategy. And note that they've actually taken some people and resources out of the operational system. so that it can operate in the entrepreneurial system and can do quick test and learns there for us. But they also have this thing in the middle, which I'm quite passionate about, called the adaptive space. And that's where our enabling leadership sits. That's where we have to say, all right, if we want to work between these two systems, and in time, our entrepreneurial system becomes our operational system, we start up again with some new things, we need, number one, people that connect our entrepreneurial and operational systems. So in this adaptive space, we have connector roles. So are you creating some connector roles in your business that can track where things are at operationally and entrepreneurially, but they are not stuck in one of those systems? Are you creating new leaders? Are you creating an adaptive culture in your adaptive space? Are you redesigning the organization so that maybe there's a pool of people with specific skill sets that we need across both? It might be in automation, it might be in analytics, that we can pull to those spaces in a flow to work strategy so that we can either upscale one or the other as we require. Or is everybody stuck in those two systems? Are we starting to build, reskill and upskill some of our people in that adaptive space? So the first thing I want you to understand is what adaptive organization is, but that it's also both entrepreneurial and operational, held together by an adaptive space. And that adaptive space is where I think HR strategy is so critical. Knowing what that operational system needs, knowing what that entrepreneurial system needs, but also knowing what capability needs to be built in the adaptive space and letting that emerge over time so that it can start to drive your new operational reality. And that will ensure that you're one of those 60% of organizations in the future that will be successful. So I wanted to start with some of those ideas on adaptive organizations and make sure that we really just understand where that comes from and then look into what does this mean for us. So what it means for us in a large way is that we need to become a digital partner, we need to become a talent driver, and we need to become this key strategic partner that contributes to the business transformation agenda. And the only way we can really do that is if we move towards customized agile solutions that can digitally transform the continuous work we do, both in HR as well as what the people are actually doing, so that we can lift the work everybody else is doing into more creative, problem-solving, customer-focused pieces of work. And while we do that, we need to make sure we're creating engaging workforce experiences for people. And we cannot afford any longer to be stuck in repetitive, ongoing work or do work for line that they're supposed to be doing with their people. And we've spoken about this for a very long time. But I think that now is the time where it's become really critical for us, seeing we only have 10 years to ensure the sustainability of our organizations. We've kind of run out of time to do that. And so what is it that we should be keeping ourselves busy with? We should be moving our organization into connected, digital, engaged organizations. If you can almost measure those three things for HR, and for your people. How connected are we to the people? How connected are they to each other? How digital is the work in the organization? How digital and easy to use have we made our HR processes? And how engaged are our people and our leaders in the organization? For me, those should be almost the three key measures you use in HR. You'll be low on it if you are in the today picture there, where you've got static workforces around very specific skills and functions, where your training is ad hoc, where you've got fragmented workforce management tools, where your innovation is disconnected from the organization, and where you've got low levels of collaboration. That kind of organization is really going to struggle in the future. If you say, what does an adaptable workforce look like that's organized much more around projects, then we say a transformed HR would start off by being insight-driven. So how do we ensure, first and foremost, that we get that really good data and analytics out that can show end-to-end what our people processes are driving for us. That is absolutely critical. Number two, we have to, as with all the others, have a two-speed strategy in HR. Deal with the operational issues. At the same time, experiment and learn with fail-fast pilots and give our people time to try those things and co-create them with us and innovate with us so that in time those can become our new practices. We have to build continuous learning as a core organizational competency. Of course, supported by growth mindset. A lot of organizations have now put growth mindset work at the core of their transformation. We need to make sure that when we know what capability we need, that we understand that our workforce is made up of our internal talent, our contractors, our crowd platforms, as well as the technology we use, what we call the cold bodies, the warm bodies and the cold bodies. Your machines and your AI is part of your workforce in the future. You need to look at it not separately but together. And finally, have we taken a project-oriented work group approach to our organization where collaboration, agility, and skill sharing is really, really high? So how do you shift that in your HR strategy and function, that you can shift this organization from today to tomorrow? And how many of your boards and leadership teams understand deeply that this needs to happen? Let me stop there and just ask you, how many, just a yes or a no, my leadership team and board gets this picture that I've got there in front of you. They get that we need to move from today to tomorrow. Just a yes or no. Yes, my board and exec gets it, or no, my board and exec has not even started engaging with this.
Stephen says yes, Tracy says no, Felix says yes, Cheryl yes, Lisa yes so far.
My next question is, have they given you the resources, money, time, and people, those of you who've said yes, to start the transformation?
Cheryl says yes. Lisa says in part. And Stephen says no, but starting.
Okay, so this is critical. One, for me, the starting point, they absolutely have to get it. And then they absolutely have to understand what the work is that needs to be done, so that you can get that requirement. And if you haven't got a board and an exec that supports this, it's going to be really hard for you to do it. I find in most cases we have to educate our leaders about the new world of work. So what does it mean for you then? Well, KPMG's got 5 quite nice points that I think, and I'll give you mine in a moment, of how HR imperatives can drive agility. We know that we need to go from program focused to outcome focused. We are still very much HR project driven. Now, we said we want to be project driven, but we don't want to be, you know, I'm going to do a culture change program and a this and a that. We really need to start to say, what outcomes are we driving? We are driving connection, experience, and agility. And then say, how do our HR projects drive those outcomes, rather than put it up as just a list of HR projects. I think our businesses really need to see how we are driving their outcomes. Secondly, I think purpose is talked about a lot, but I'm not sure that we are clear enough in HR about how what we do is driving the purpose of the organizations and how that's going to bind our people in this new way of working, because they're going to be much more empowered, but they need to be bound to the purpose. We do need to create a compelling experience, not in small bits. We're seeing employee experience being rolled out, but in very small, disjointed bits. We really need to start to look at the whole employee experience and make sure we digitalize it and make it accessible on our mobile phones. Number 4 is probably the hardest one, I think. How do you actualize the culture? That is really hard. How do you actualize adaptive culture, collaborative culture, real-time feedback? Those things are hard to change, but need a lot of focus, and just not enough probably done there yet. And then reward. Reward is an interesting one for me, number 5. If our KPIs are not changing, if we are still rewarding for individual effort but trying to drive collaboration, those things are simply not going to work together. How do we make sure we start rewarding for impact and outcomes that we are really seeking, and also for alignment to purpose? So if I look at those 5 things, it would be good to see in your people strategy that you really have shifted that way, and that's the kind of conversation that you're starting to have. Now, I know I've put this up before for you, those of you who've seen it, but I really strongly believe that if we cannot start with a flow to work structure in HR, where we can actually start to flow towards the priorities for the business, we are not going to be agile enough. And so I love this work from Deloitte, and we've actually done this in a few clients now, where we've done the employee experience design and we've digitalized it. So imagine that is done at the bottom. But our HR business partners in the green are the ones who work with the business on what the outcomes are that they're trying to achieve. And if you look at the bottom there, this business in particular said to the HR business partners, we need to get into new markets, number 1. Number 2, we need workforce efficiency. Number 3, mergers and acquisitions on our plate this year. And number 4, we need significant change in one of our businesses. That has got to be the starting point. And if we then say, but we have a community of expertise, specialists, org effectiveness, mobility, resourcing, those people are going to flow to work as we need them. And some of those don't have to sit inside our organization. We can partner with others. Then my business partner can take the project number 1 and say, for this project where we have to drive into new markets, we need rapid expansion, which drives talent acquisition and global mobility for us. I'm going to partner with mobility, resourcing, and talent specialists and run this project end to end to get those outcomes for my organization. And once people have rolled off that, they might roll on to project number 2, which is driving workforce efficiency. And here I'm really going to need workforce analytics, culture shifting, more scheduling, more development. And I'm going to pull talent reward and learning and development in. We really need to start to think differently about our HR operating models and structures. I know you all love Ulrich, and there's nothing wrong with Ulrich. The issue is that the HR business partners have not really stepped into this role that we're describing here. We have not really digitalized the employee experience enough and driven the analytics enough to get us into understanding what we need to do. And we don't have enough flow to work capability in the teams to drive it to where we need to have them work at the moment that matters. So let me stop there. Any comments on the structure?
Nothing so far.
I don't know how else to really get HR more agile in terms of a delivery model than to start to have this kind of model where we are digitalized in our employee experience, we are driving through strategic HR business partners with projects, and we are flowing to work on these different business outcomes. Any comments so far, Alan?
Nothing at the moment, Marianne.
Please feel free to comment at any time. I hope I've not shocked you too much. So what does that mean? Well, it means a few new roles as well for us. I would hope you already have an employee experience consultant in your team that really understands design thinking. Workforce shapers. Do we know how to put those ecosystemic talent groups together? Definitely data modelers and scientists. That would be the first one I would grab. Somebody who really understands data models and can give me really good predictive analytics. But I would also make sure that my delivery operations leader is very strong, that has a very strong customer service mindset, because I want that employee experience, digitalized and automated employee experience to run really well, so that my workforce shapers and employee experience consultants can get on with it and really create an organization that's really sticky for the best talent. Because we are now probably in the space where the skills revolution is going to hit us in a very big way. And I think there's a lot of fear out there with people, and one of the things HR has to do is how do we calm that down? How do we help people to understand that robots take tasks, not jobs? And so what we need to understand is what capabilities do we need to deliver our outcomes, and which of those capabilities are best done or tasks by machines and which are best done by humans. And then we need to reshape those roles back and lift them so that we can utilize this amazing human capability that we have. I think machines are taking their work back. I don't think we were ever meant to be doing things that are so routine and repetitive as human beings. I think we were meant to do things that are more creative and customer-oriented and collaborative. And so one of your key things as you step forward is not just that you transform yourselves and how you work and create new roles, but you have a really long look at how work is done in the organization and in a digital world. What we do think is that, I don't know why it keeps jumping, what we do think is that there'll actually be more jobs rather than less. But I'm wondering, and I'm just going to ask this question again, how many of you have got a really in-depth, serious capability and reskilling program running? Let me just check. How many of you have really started to think about, as we digitize, as we create new roles, how do we reskill, upskill, drive cognitive skills in our people? Anybody got a good, solid capability strategy there? Reskilling strategy?
Nothing so far, Marianne.
So you're shocked about the structure and also quiet on the reskilling. So this is interesting because I think this is probably the thing that we should be most worried about. I think the good news is that it doesn't have to be our current fixed full-time FTE either. I think once we unpack in our value chain what capabilities we need, what can be done better by humans, what can be done better by machines, and we start to put things together in systems, cognitive jobs, leading of people, and transactional jobs, we can really start to see how our new structures play out. And we can really have quite a flexible and adaptive workforce model. I know it's harder when you're unionized, I understand that. I think that's something we need to work through. But it would be really interesting to see if you kind of shape your organization out right now, to say how many jobs do we have that are cognitive, that really are developing ideas, concepts, and strategies? Where are we actually already using systems or AI or robotics? Where do we still have some leadership roles that are really leading our people? And where are those transactional roles? And how many of those can we actually automate? It'd be interesting to see over time how that circle changes in your organization, because there certainly are. And one of my favorite models is this one from Ashoka. If you kind of think about how do we meta-skill our organization, I quite like that. I've got clients who do personal agility there, so they will do growth mindset, grit, self-awareness, emotional agility, relationships, and collaboration. What are those core skills, new mindsets, lifelong learning approaches that can help our people to cope with whatever we throw at them? How do we meta-skill our workforce for the future? Then how do we upskill? So that's employees that are currently doing a job that don't need reskilling, but they need to do the same job in a new way. So new skills with new technology, but it's an old job. So how many of those do we need for upskilling? And then digital reskilling. So we're not going to have those jobs anymore. So we need people now that can program, that can design, that can do data analytics for us, that can work on more complex tasks. These are newly created ITC jobs. And four is an interesting one. Where do we need to also help our people with human reskilling? They might have been back in a factory, and now we're asking them to actually innovate, deal with our customers, answer queries, and get much more involved. So really interested in whether in your HR strategy, to be able to help this adaptive organization, you can drive this reskilling strategy. For me, probably the most important thing you can do is to drive this alongside the leadership and culture change. Because if we don't have the right capabilities at the right time, I think that is when the organization is going to start to struggle. Also, we know, that's why I said the employee experience is so important. We know that those who invest in that outperform those who don't a lot. So amount by which companies invest in employee experiences, that we see average profit 4.2 times more, profit per employee 4 times more, revenue per employee 2.8 times more, not necessarily pay. So this doesn't mean that employee experience is pay or even development. It just means that people are happy and they're feeling valued and cared for. And so you start to see that that could also make you a lot more agile. And I'm not going to go into that much detail. I want to get into your org design. How many of you have shifted your org design out of silos and out of bureaucracy into cross-functional end-to-end teams, fluid resourcing, and much more focused on project Scrum methodologies? Have you been able to shift your whole organization, or do you have just maybe your software teams and some of your other teams working this way? Any comments on that? Have you really started to look at it from a machine to an organism that can shift and change as we need it to? Or are we still stuck in the machine era? Alan, have they gone quiet on me?
All gone quiet. All gone quiet at the moment. Yeah, no, nothing at the moment. No comments just yet.
And then also, have you got a talent portfolio that's really starting to use? And this is why I said to you, remember, your technology is also talent. So you've got 3 types of talent: traditional talent, gig economy talent, and technology talent. So your talent portfolio needs to make up all those things. And then you need to manage your multiple talent pools in an integrated way. So traditional talent would be full-time and part-time. People start to think about part-time as gig. It's not gig. It's still part of your traditional talent. Your gig talent is freelance, local, but also global. We have an enormous opportunity now to use people from all over the world that we need to do pieces of work for us. But your technology-driven talent, your robotics and AI, very much needs to be counted as part of the capability that's driving the outcomes in your organization. So I wonder whether you have shifted the way you see talent so that you can start to shift capability and talent in ways that really enable your organization to deliver their outcomes.
Kim says that she's starting to get the talent portfolio in their business.
There
we go.
And ask her if she has got, Kim, have you got technology-driven talent as part of that portfolio? Have you taken that into account?
Just waiting on an answer there.
Because a lot of people see that as separate. And I think this is where IT and finance need to become your absolute best friends. You need to be really close with each other. And together, the 3 areas, finance, IT, and HR people, need to put a talent portfolio together that is cost optimized and talent optimized, so that you really can see what the best way is to deliver your outcomes.
Kim says we're just starting to get the talent portfolio, and it's actually quite exciting, with a smile as well.
That's great. It's a fantastic thing to do. Best place to start.
Yeah.
And of course, informed by people analytics. So I know that you've heard this a lot, but people analytics is not just HR. You have to put HR and business data together. I think that we often just look at, for example, workforce planning or comp and benefits or learning, but we actually have to say, what does that all mean together with sales revenue, with accident, errors and fraud, with customer retention? Because otherwise we're not getting groundbreaking new insights. We want to know how our people processes are driving these outcomes. So please don't do HR analytics without business data. Please make sure that you take a really good helicopter view of people analytics. What do we want to know? How does this impact sales? How does that impact productivity? How does that impact customer retention? And it's really time for us to invest in these AI-based augmented analytics that can really help us. You know, even looking at, you've got so much data, looking at comments people made. My wonderful friends that do 360 work the other day at the Leadership Circle simply took all the comments that had been written in the 360s over the last 10, 15 years and just put AI through it and really had a look at what are the patterns coming. You get amazing insights when you look at those kind of things. You know, written comments people have made in performance reviews over the last 5 years. Those things are incredible to look at, and make sure you really have actionable data that you can drive these things on, because you want to think like a business consultant and really ask the right questions. And finally, make sure you have those processes automated. There is nothing worse than paper-based, horrible manual processes and Excel-based workforce planning sheets. We really have to reduce our errors. We need our data analyzed. We need to make sure as HR we are improving customer service. We need to use our HR professionals better. Remember we said, what can machines do better? What can people do better? HR, as Jacob Morgan says, is not human resources, it's human transformation. So how do we make sure that the resources part of it is managed by automation, by digitalization? And the transformation part is where we step in and we work with our leaders, we work with our cultures, we create that capability. We really do that value-added strategic work. And that automation helps us to streamline those processes and minimum viable design, minimum viable bureaucracy. That's what design thinking is about. If we don't need a Rolls Royce, if we need a push bike, let's give people a push bike and make sure we're spending more time on actually creating the capability that we need. There's amazing process automation out there with robotics, and the cost has come down significantly. It really is time for us to do that. And to people say to me, what apps are there? This is one page of about 5 pages. There are so many apps out there. Please don't buy any technology until you've actually designed your employee experience. Because what you want is that it enables your employee experience and it bakes your engagement into that experience. What you don't want is vendors coming to you telling you this is the best thing and it's going to change things. You need to drive that from what is the employee experience for which personas that we want to drive. And your 2-speed strategy, if you start to think about how do we do this, your own 2-speed strategy should be one of, we are going to transform HR. In other words, we're going to automate it. We're going to get analytics in, change our operating model, change our jobs. And at the same time, we're going to drive a different people strategy. We're going to get our employee experience sorted out. We're going to digitalize it. And then we're going to focus on a strong capability, a talent portfolio, and a capability development plan. And that's all we're going to do. We're going to make sure that we drive these business outcomes and do them really well and get out of those 50 to 100 HR projects we have every year. And we're just going to get really, really focused on what matters right now. And it might take us 3 to 5 years, but it will enable us as well as the organization significantly. And for me, these 7 steps are what I would probably say. Make sure you are actually driving the business strategy. Don't talk about culture change programs and all of those things. Talk about growing the business, retaining customers, driving M&A, and then talk about how you're actually doing that through human resources and human transformation. It's time to blow up HR. It really is. It's time to blow up that HR operating model. If you've put in Ulrich, make sure it's actually working, because in a lot of cases it's been put in, but it's not actually working. It's got no flow to work. It's got no proper data analytics. It doesn't have the strong HR business partners. Make sure you pull that in. As I said, define those employee experiences, minimum viable design, not over-engineered. Test and learn, test and learn. Don't scale big until you know it works. Use predictive analytics. We spoke about that. Use agile methods and fluid resourcing. I've shown you that picture, which looks like it scared you a little bit, but it's actually not that hard to get right. Build your organization capability. Know what is absolutely critical in reskilling, upskilling, human skilling, and meta skilling. And really rethink those talent and resourcing models. If you start to do these 7 things over the next year or two, you'll be able to significantly shift your organization and your HR function, and you'll be able to add a lot more value into the organization. Let me stop there. Any questions? Time for you now to ask me 1 or 2 questions. Hopefully that's been helpful. You can comment on that. But any questions? Let's take 2 or 3 questions now from the group and see if we can help sort through some of these issues.
We did have a nice comment from Kim, Marianne, who just wants a copy of the presentation, which we'll make available after this session, which she said this is fantastic. So that's nice feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe comments as well about what was most important for you, what was your biggest ahas would be helpful for us to call out, as well as any questions, anything you didn't understand and want me to go back to.
Nothing at the minute.
Okay, we'll just give you a moment.
Yeah, sure.
And just maybe one other thing you can think about putting in the chat box is, what are you going to do next? I always say, so what, now what? It's lovely to attend these things, but so what, now what? What does this mean for you, and what are you actually going to do about it? So please give us a little bit of feedback. Just use your last 5 minutes. What stood out for you? So what, now what? Or any question you might have of something that might be clear. Yes.
Okay, so Martin has asked, would these same principles apply in smaller organizations?
Yes, they do. And I think they almost apply more, Martin, because you don't have a lot of capabilities. So for me, a flow to work and partnership model is even more important for you, is to really think about, you know, if I had a small business, I would think about what's the minimum viable design for my employee experience. I would start there, that everybody needs. I wouldn't go bells and whistles and really detailed. I would definitely get the automation going so that, you know, people can really help themselves as much as possible. And then I would think, what's the most critical? Like, is it capability building or something? I would have 2 or 3 core resources internally, and then I would think about who can I partner with at times when I need them to be able to deliver the pieces of work that I need to do. So for me, it's even more important when you've got less resources to have that flow to work partnership type of model.
And Kim says that she is loving the building capability and getting rid of spreadsheets to focus on more strategic and employee experience. Very poignant.
Thank you. That's great. Those are all absolutely critical things for us to do. Anybody else? Questions, comments? What are you going to do about what you know now? Well, let me ask this last question. Are you ready for it? Let's make sure everybody types in there. Are you ready for this? Are you scared? Are you ready?
We've got yes from Lisa.
Good.
With a capital Y-E-S. Thanks.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, any others?
Absolutely. Ruth says. Cheryl, also a yes.
Mm-hmm.
A yes from Tracy. So plenty of yeses and absolutely's.
Fantastic. Well, I'm really glad to hear that, because I think it is the time for HR. I really want to encourage all of you to become human transformation, to take this. Also, please link with me on LinkedIn. I'm always very, very happy to be linked with people. And we do write a lot, don't we, Alan? And
Yes.
You can always follow us on LinkedIn. You can also pop me any questions you felt that you didn't want to ask in the forum today. Please feel free to drop me a note on the LinkedIn message. And Alan, also, we're going to make sure that we send this presentation in a PDF format to everybody.
Oh, terrific. Yes. Yeah, we'll absolutely send it as a PDF. And also we will make it available to all people that registered, so they will be able to watch it again and at their own time as well. That's no problem.
Fantastic. Any final comments, Alan, from you? Anybody else?
If for anyone that's in Melbourne that's interested, Marianne is running the next module of our Adaptive HR program. So that's the 11th of September in Melbourne, and that one is on modernized people processes. So if anybody's interested and would like to know more about that, please do feel free to reach out to me at the next step. So just contact me through the next step. Other than that, we will certainly make this presentation available again. I think that's about it. Kim just said to say as well that she is ready also, but realize it's time to start having conversations across every level. So that was a comment.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just encourage you to be courageous. These are not easy conversations, but I think when you start to show them the things like 40% of organizations will not exist in a meaningful way in 10 years, I do find that the leaders sit a bit upright. I think they have more time than what they have. And it really is human resources time to set the table, not find a seat at the table, is what I think. And so I wish you all well, and I hope to stay connected to all of you.
Thanks so much, Marianne, for your time today. That was fantastic and really insightful. And thanks also to all the participants who came along today. It was really worthwhile. So have a lovely weekend, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks a lot. Bye for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.